Welcome back to A People's Guide to Publishing. I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing and Distribution. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 25 years.
I'm Ellie Blue. I'm the editorial and marketing director here at Microcosm. We are an independent mid-list publisher based in Portland, Oregon. We have 14 employees, over 650 titles in print with 20 to 40 new books per year, and we distribute thousands of titles from other publishers.
We started this podcast so that we can share what we've learned with newer publishers so that you can learn from our mistakes.
Or maybe you just want to understand the publishing industry.
This week, we are going to talk about why our 2021 was so successful. If you missed last week's program, it tells you the brass tacks of those numbers. We review our annual report where we sold $3.449 million worth of books. And this time we will tell you how we did that rather than just the fact that we did do that. So, how did we do that?
Well, the number one reason on Joe's list of reasons is teamwork. There is a platitudinous word if I've ever heard one, but it does have a meaning.
Well, it's a little complicated, but yeah, it is it's one of those things where we just got departments to work better interdepartmentally, and we got people to we restructured a lot of silos and departments.
And we're still doing it. This is still ongoing in 2022, but just I guess we're still doing it because it worked so well.
Yeah.
And it was really just a lot of being hey, when this person does this, can they tell you and then you do this? It really is that simple.
And on the other end, it's getting people out of the habit of being can anybody help me with this?
Oh, yes.
It's it has to instead be the right person who is trained on that task and knows how to do it. And, and that's and it's, it's one of those things that becomes increasingly necessary as we grow,
Yeah,
which
totally.
is working within structures rather than just somebody else then coming in hours later and being oh, I already did that. Or, oh,
Right.
It's over here, And so part of that too is taking a more active role in managing people, which is, sort of guiding them towards their goals, hearing them out, helping them solve their problems, and building that relationship so that, they know that that's how problems get solved.
Yeah, we invested a lot. We went from being I would say Microcosm, when I first got to know Microcosm in 2009, was anti-management.
It's true. It's true.
And then there were many years of wanting to manage the company but not quite knowing how or being able to, and then we kind of finally in the last few years have gotten it together where everybody knows what their job is, everybody knows who they report to, everybody knows who they work with, and what the expectations are and what the outcome is. It's, boring corporate stuff, but it really works.
Right, yeah, that's true. And then when I took over in 2012 again, yeah, that was kind of one of the first things I did where it was okay, I need to learn how to do this.
Oh yeah, you got that book, It's Okay to Be the Boss.
And it was at first everybody panicked a little bit because they thought that meant unnecessary oversight or
micromanagement. Nobody likes that.
They thought it meant just telling them to do things some way for no real reason. But then, people came around more and more to be oh, I get it. It's making, it's solving problems and, not leaving me high and dry on my own.
It's even coordination more than management. I don't know.
True.
Anyway, we also invested significantly in our software that we use. And that is almost better than management itself is giving people the tools to have a process be automated instead of be very tedious and take hours every day.
Yeah, so we built so many different things. We made it so you can split an order just at the touch of a button. And then, so now that we have multiple warehouses, you can be okay, there we have this here and we have that there, so we can ship those from separate places. Mm-hmm. And then, things like inventory managing, which helps to manage things like reprints, which is super helpful because when you have a trending bestseller or you have a hot bestseller, it can be pretty easy to miss when you need to reprint it,
Mm-hmm.
especially now that we have 789 titles or whatever. There's just like so many that like automation is the only way.
Yeah.
Because it was getting to the point where somebody would be like, we're out of this. Any idea when we're getting more?
The biggest project was probably having, like, rebuilding the site so we could have we could have multiple inventory locations so that we could ship out of our second warehouse.
Right.
And then probably the second biggest was, like, your automated ordering tools.
Right, yeah. And so we built it where they can, like, receive from a purchase order at the touch of a button, where they're like, okay, we ordered these and we ordered these and we ordered these, and then it like,
oh yeah, and the receiving tools, we did a lot.
And that adds the expenses into our accounting, which adds those to our taxes, which like it's just magic. Where and then it adds it to inventory when you do it into receiving, and then it marks that purchase order closed. Oh, it's brilliant. And then like finances has always been pretty automated, but we did a lot more with that. And then now we've automated accounts payable, so it's like, you owe this much money that is due on this day, and I get a daily digest that's like, here are the people, here are the dates, here are the amounts. And that's super helpful. And then, we automated shipping, so we no longer have to use a separate program. It's all shipped from our database, which is...
You hit a button and it prints a label. It's so nice.
I just did it and it worked. It was amazing. Not to be surprised, but...
1 year later, just discovered our shipping software.
And so, yeah, this has just, like, really delivered us. And then, the thing that is, like, has always really worked well for us is every one of our best-selling books is a debut, meaning the first book that person wrote by an author without a platform. And we really sell it just on the curation and the book development. So it's like, what's the value proposition? Why do people care? How do we tell them what it's about?
And we like do not care how many followers you have on Twitter or whatever.
End of story.
Because that doesn't matter.
Right. Because like, well, I mean, you could really fall into a deep hole looking at like the Billie Eilish story of the book that didn't sell. But here we are telling you that's not how you sell books. So
right.
But that is so that how we sell books is just making a book with a clear value proposition.
So, in the beginning of 2019, back in the dawn of time, many months ago, we switched from having a outside distributor to self-distribution, and we've talked a lot about that on this podcast. I don't think we need to go more into it, but that is what really saved our bacon during the pandemic, honestly.
And in that time, our sales have increased 368%. Or actually, no, they had increased 368% by December. Now they have quadrupled. It is working.
It worked very well. It worked very, very well for us in the year before the pandemic, and then during the pandemic, it's like,
magic.
Yeah, and just means we don't have massive returns, we don't have massive fees, and somehow, I mean, we know our books and we love our books, we're really good at selling our books, and they don't have to compete with all the other publishers in a distributor's catalog, so... Yeah,
and we just get more attention, we can put the right amount of attention on the right titles, we're closer to the customer, it's a whole thing. And then we also worked a lot on our supply chains, and that was another thing where... we mostly sell to specialty retailers, but in the past few years we added a lot of gift retailers as well. And we've also, while we're at it, we also added a lot of sales in the bookstore realm, which has been fascinating. And so a lot of that is just like we have great relationships with our printers, we have great relationships with our customers. It's like we've really shored up the supply chain, which not related to when supply chain entered the news. We had focused on that previously.
We could not have come through 2021 and all of the turmoil of success without incredible employees and fast warehouse shippers.
Yeah, we were pretty slow through 2020, and we got a lot of complaints about about how slow we were.
Oh yeah, we were behind. Our warehouses were behind.
We
so
were
hard.
we were a trendsetter in being behind. Like, we were behind before other publishers were behind.
We were like 2 to 3 weeks behind somehow, and now we're like hardly ever more than a week behind, which is much better than our peers. Sorry, peers.
And then, when we opened the other warehouse in 2021, while other publishers were struggling to hire people and like staff their warehouses, that was when, ironically, we were current on shipping. We were normally within like a 72-hour window, which is, that's been super helpful for us.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of that, like, there was the great exodus from the workforce and people changing jobs and quitting, and I think we lost one employee during the entire pandemic, and that was like not...
In 2020.
Yeah, that was in 2020.
0 in 2021.
We had 0. Yeah, we only added, nobody left. Our people are awesome. They're sad when there's a snowstorm because they can't come to work and they want to come to work.
And so a lot of the reason that we grew is that we were investing in our growth while lots of companies had budget freezes and were hesitating and, were furloughing their employees and doing layoffs, And it was weird because lots of publishers were like, wow, you're so brave to like invest now. And you're like, well, we're investing now because our sales are really strong. Wait, isn't this like a record time for book sales? Like, across the board, why is everybody hesitating? It just doesn't make any sense to me. And, there's like some sectors like libraries where that's not true. But, unless you're working in academic sales or something, like, it's a great time to sell books. So I couldn't understand it. So we benefited from it and it worked out really great. So that's my advice. Don't always listen to the riffraff. We talked a little bit about this already, but one thing we did to great aplomb is a year or two ago, Ellie and I each had people that reported to us individually. And I don't remember how this happened, but I think we both realized that it would just be better for everybody if I could focus on the big picture growth of the organization while Ellie focused on the day-to-day management of people and systems. And so like what happens is, I create a system. Ellie tells me how or why it doesn't work. And then we refine it until it like serves both the bigger picture goals of the organization and like the individual needs of the people that work within it. And
we work well together. It's kind of nice.
It's amazing. Well, I mean, more to the point, it's like it's doing the things that it's supposed to do.
Yeah, it is. It is very functional, and I love it. Like, I would so much rather. I mean, the idea of thinking about what might happen 10 years from now is extremely daunting to me. But the idea of solving a problem of what's going to happen tomorrow, I'm into it.
Oh, yeah. I guess that's like kind of where I excel. It's like I would much rather not hear about somebody telling me why something doesn't work, and I would much rather focus on
it's true
where we're going to be in 10 years.
And it is kind of better for me to be like, ooh, yeah, let's figure that out. I'm in, and this is so fun, than to have you be like, oh, just make it work.
Which is the answer. But so that's, this is again, like playing to our individual strengths where like I'm so much better at like looking past the difficulties and the hurdles and looking much more at the like, okay, what we'll need for that to be true then, And,
finally,
but lastly,
supporting each other. And this is another thing where I think it really is like the team that we've built. It's just like, we had everyone take this like this funny free strengths quiz a while ago, and like by far the most common strength our staff shares is empathy, which
it makes them good at their jobs.
I know, right? It's like, I mean, you have to, like, you need to be empathetic and care about people to publish the kind of books that we do and to to work in publishing, and I think that really shows in our company culture, which I don't think either of us can really take all that much credit for, but like, I guess we've gotten out of the way. We haven't prevented it from happening.
Like, we've selected those people and like allowed them to behave. Like, we've created the culture that like encourages that rather than discourages that.
Yeah, and it's like, I remember actually back in like 2017, I like stated the goal to you that I wanted to have the kind of company culture where like when somebody made a mistake, they would like be like, hey, look, everybody, at this mistake that I made, instead of like hiding it or covering it up or being embarrassed. Right. And then everybody could be like, oh yeah, I've made that mistake too, or like, here's my workaround for that. And I think it finally like happened the other day where somebody like, yeah, like somebody in Cleveland left the door unlocked overnight. And like, I feel like, you know, in our company culture 5 years ago, no one would have fessed up, but the person immediately was like, oh my God, that was me. I'm so sorry. And I was like, yes, we're winning. Like, that just felt really good.
Right. And so that, like, all together, though, you know, it's like you need a little bit of each of these things. And then, but like in summation, like, that's why it worked so well, you know? Everything from the, like, you know, looking at the big picture and projectioning down the road to, like, hearing people out and solving their problems, you know? And so, you know, like now, the only trouble is that when I projected our growth low for this year, then people like started to doubt me and thought we were going to have another like incredibly epic year. So
It's true. I still have my doubts. We'll see.
now people are having trouble believing me in the other direction.
We'll tune in next week to see what our projections for 2022 are.
Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub,
On Twitter at Microcosm,
on Facebook at Microcosm Publishing,
on Instagram at Microcosm_pub.
and here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.